Story 1. Upon being introduced, we realized we worked a block away from each other, so we agreed to hang out over lunch breaks. The first few occasions, she listened patiently whilst I bitched continuously about my ex-wife. Yes, a big no-no when dating, but I wasn't looking for a relationship, just company. Then my grandfather died, and when I returned from attending the funeral in my home country, she was unexpectedly waiting for me at the airport with the words, "Hi, I thought you would need a friend." We fell hopelessly in love over the next few months, and 17 years later, we're still falling.
This is so cute. It sounds like the plot of a romance movie.
Thank you. When I walk down memory lane of that time, it honestly feels that way. I feel incredibly fortunate.
See, if I did that, I'll just be taken for granted. Chuckles.
Story 2. She sat in my dad's driveway, hitting her own head with a 2x4, until I came over to tell her, for the 100th time, that it's over.
That one small trick to beating an assault charge.
She should have used a big-ass rock. It makes a difference, apparently, and that's how my ex got me back.
I've heard of kidney stones. What is an ass rock?
Story 3. A woman once pretended she needed directions to a place we were already standing in front of. She kept asking follow-up questions, joking that she was directionally hopeless, chuckles, then admitted she just wanted an excuse to talk. Unexpected, low pressure, and honestly kind of charming.
This is actually genius. Low stakes, non-threatening, and gives you a natural conversation opener. Meanwhile, I once had someone ask me for directions, and I just gave her directions, walked away, didn't realize until 3 hours later.
I think the reason men play these games instead of asking straight up is because a lot of women hate being asked straight up right off the bat. It would be easier if it was like Skyrim, where people wear that amulet of Mara if they were open to being approached.
I get it, but it still doesn't feel right. One time, this girl approached me, and we were talking for about 20 minutes until she told me her name wasn't the name she said it was. I kind of get it, but we talked about our names a bit, jokes and laughs about it. Then later, I learned it was all a lie. It just doesn't feel good for me. If it's okay for them, that's all right, but I just get a visceral ick from it. I can't help it.
Story 4. She said she was a natural blonde and asked me if I wanted to see. Oh yes, she showed me her armpit.
In contrast, one girl told me she has no hair below her eyebrows. How'd I get to see that?
Story 5. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You seem interesting. What's your deal?" No games, no hints, just bold curiosity. Honestly, it caught me way more off guard than any subtle move ever could.
Not everyone could be that bold, but you could be more bold than a boulder.
That is nightmare fuel for an introvert.
That kind of straight up honesty hits different and makes you actually want to stick around.
Story 6. I was standing completely naked in my living room when I got back from the bathroom.
I invited somebody I just started seeing over and told her to bring her laundry since her washer was broken. She came in and stripped buck naked. It was a lot of fun while her clothes were washing and drying.
I did that once. Chuckle softly. It's because I wasn't expecting to get laid that night and was wearing my old lady minimizer bra that was not very cute. I didn't really want him to see it, but I did look pretty great naked, so I figured he'd be too distracted to think about anything but fucking me. And I was right.
It was a bit intimidating at first because it was so unexpected, but she was acting so playful and slutty that it's easily one of my top 3 hottest sex moments of my life. We were just super sexually compatible. At least that time, not so much the next few times.
Story 7. I walked out front and saw a woman shoving dog shit into my mailbox. She started yelling at me, "Pick up after your dog, motherfucker." I yelled back, "I don't have a dog." It took her a moment before she believed me, but she was totally embarrassed by it. Apparently, my neighbor constantly leaves dog shit in her yard, and she followed him back home. He walked through his backyard gate, which is right next to mine, so she thought it was my house. She totally got my attention for sure. Chuckles.
Chuckles. How do you prove you don't have a dog? That sounds weird as hell. I hope she left the shit for your neighbor. I have a dog, and I fucking hate when people don't clean up after them.
Story 8. Look at all the condoms Student Health gave me. The hint didn't dawn on me until months later.
Want to go test them out? Of course, I wouldn't think of that response until I was alone in the shower days later.
This hint would never work on a dude. We're too interested in seeing a lot of something to read any further. A lot of something is interesting. It's like if you see a hole and you throw something in to see how deep it goes. Men love seeing a lot of whatever.
Damn, sounds like she wanted to have a water balloon fight. You really missed out.
Story 9. My wife pretended to be interested in what I was listening to. As it turns out, she really didn't care much for Alice in Chains.
Here comes the rooster. Yay.
Haha, this is the same for me. My wife pretended to like Coheed and Cambria and Killswitch Engage. I paid her back by going to a Coldplay concert with her years later. It was surprisingly good. They're absolutely an arena band in that they put on a show. I kind of get why you'd want to take your head of human resources to impress her. Now, if I put on anything remotely heavier than what my infant daughter wants to listen to, it gets turned off without question.
They have such a great variety of music. She could, or should like Jar Flies. That's the only one my wife will tolerate. I play that while cleaning the house.
Story 10. I called her up, and in the background I could hear the baseball telecast. She had started following my freaking team. I knew right then and there to give in. 23 years later and still going. She's even gone to a few games every season.
She knew what she was doing. Probably turned the TV up before answering the phone. Chuckles, the intent is awesome though.
Story 11. A girl in high school told me right before lunch that she'd left something at home and wanted to know if I'd come with her to get it. I was like, oh, I was going to go to Burger King with Kevin and Gustavo. She just stared at me and said, are they going to suck your dick? I laughed and said, no, it's Whopper Wednesday. Anyway, I was telling the story to Kevin and Gustavo on the way to Burger King, and they were like, you fucking idiot. I realized what I'd done and almost threw up. I saw her after lunch in another class and said, I'm an idiot. She said, yeah, you are. Jesus Christ. Anyway, missed my chance on that one. Never came back around again.
Imagine turning down sex for fucking Burger King.
I did much the same thing in college. A fantastic Lebanese girl I knew only a little mentioned that she never got flowers, so I sent her a single carnation, and if I do say so myself, very nice bit of poetry. She called me, just melting, asked me to come to her dorm room. I'm supposed to go to the movies with my friends in a bit. Chuckles, I am not a smart man.
I swear, Reddit must self-select for autistic people, because how the fuck do you miss that massive hint? It's literally right in your face.
Story 12. I went out to a bar with some work friends. A woman whom I've never met just walked up to me, kissed me, and walked out. Story 13. I handed her the Starbucks drink she ordered, and she licked her top lip suggestively, then said, thank you, with a wink. I will never forget it.
No, it was more like Rob Schneider and Stabler. Chuckles.
I'm watching this movie and scrolling past this comment as we speak.
Story 14. A girl had a Slim Jim and came up to me and said, this is what I want to do to your dick. Then she bit off the top third of it. She apparently thought biting a Slim Jim aggressively was sexy. It did have its intended effect. A couple of years later, I found out she'd become a heroin addict.
Oh, I fully believe this. I envy your life experiences if you're still able to question this level of weird.
Story 15. My very first day of my sophomore year at a new high school. In my first class in the morning, a girl came over and wrote her number and a little message for me on the page of the textbook I was looking at. I was completely flustered. I hadn't even had my first kiss yet. Never mind never having experienced someone approach me so boldly and upfront. I had talked to a few girls at that point, but never gone beyond that because I was a coward. Did that change when she wrote her number in my book? No, I never texted her. Not that year, at least. Another time, she came up to me in the hall and asked if I wanted her to front me an ounce of weed to sell or something, and I said nah. We finally ended up hanging out during winter break of my senior year, after I posted a Facebook status like, who wants to smoke or something like that, and she messaged me saying she wanted to. I said all right, and she got some random person to drop her off at my house around 10 p.m. Long story short, about 7 months later, I had my first real relationship-related heartbreak. Good times. Funnily enough, we ended up matching on Tinder about 4 years ago, and she didn't even realize it was me. Things came full circle in a way. Chuckles.
Oh, we hung out a few times after we matched and caught up on life and joked about old times. It was the first time I had a real chance to talk to her in a while, and it was just nicer and different since we were both older. I never wanted to get back with her or anything. She ended up finding a guy, and we just kind of drifted apart again after that and haven't spoken since. This all happened within about a 2-month span after we matched 4 years ago. But if I saw her, I'd have no issue catching up again. The whole story makes me happy and sad to think about sometimes. Bittersweet, but not quite bitter. It kind of felt like a destiny thing for a while, you know?
Story 16. It was indirect, but I'm going to tell it because it was so unexpected. Chuckles. I was on a dinner cruise with friends for New Year's. I was talking to a random woman near me during dinner, debating whether I wanted to pursue her. But there was a woman at another table who was drop-dead gorgeous, wearing a red dress. Dinner ended, dancing started, and lots of people went to the restroom. At that moment, the woman in red's friends accosted the women in our group and said, "Our friend wants your friend." A minute later, at least 3 women physically grabbed me and the gal in red, pushed and dragged us across the dance floor, and shoved us into each other. It was a great night. Story 17. She touched my butt. I flinched, but pretended I didn't notice, and acted as if nothing had happened. I didn't talk to her again. Story 18. I'm shit with women. I honestly wouldn't know if it was a hint or not. For example, a woman I'd been talking to for a while asked my opinion on the lingerie she'd bought and showed me photos of her in it. I told her my favorite and went on with my day. When I was talking to a mate and telling him the story, he called me a fucking idiot, laughed, and explained that it was a hint. She wanted to show me in person. Shit.
Like that ending scene from Dumb and Dumber.
Story 19. Is it cheating if I'm the woman commenting? My best friend and I were interested in these 2 guys. They seemed way more into each other than into us. Chuckles. So we got completely naked. We were about to go skinny dipping and started making out, but they didn't seem to care or notice at all.
Right? If I saw that, I'd be like, oh shit, maybe we should give them some privacy. How the fuck else could that be taken?
Plot twist. Her best friend was actually the one she was interested in.
I definitely would have thought you were lesbians, especially if you didn't invite the guys over. Seriously, my buddy and I were interested in these 2 ladies, so we stripped naked and started making out. How does that make sense?
Story 20. They play devil's advocate whenever I'm feeling indecisive, and somehow I see them in a whole new light. It's quite enlightening to see how different your guy friends and girlfriends are. Story 21. Outside of my wife, the only thing a girl has done to get my younger self's attention was for her and her friend, who I was also close with, to both start hitting on me nonstop for a full 30 minutes. I had a huge crush on that girl, but I was 12 and just learning my charm. But I wasn't able to handle 2 girls coming at me. I still don't understand the tactic. The girl I liked also liked me and got her friend, who I confirmed was not interested in me, to crush me with overly sexual advances, as much as 11 or 12-year-olds can muster on a 12-year-old me. It really crushed me, and I burst into tears. I was a very, very soft little kid and needed a tender hand. If someone could go back in time and tell my parents that, it would save me 20 years of pain. I am still, to this day, 25 years later, an anxious person, but I use that anxiety to help me be more full of myself and confident. Both of those girls were awesome, and I was in love with the one who had a crush on me. I hope they're both very happy, as I am holding my daughter right now. Warm.
Thank you. It's one of those memories that pop up once every 6 to 9 months, and I'm stuck awake for hours, unable to forget it even though it was 24, 25 years ago. The brain's ability to remember very uncomfortable things in full, 100% clarity is crazy. All the best days of my life, I can only remember vaguely.
Story 22. We kept catching each other's eyes from across the dance floor. Later, she came up to me and asked, "So, why didn't you come over and talk to me?" Story 23. A woman I was interested in told me to dream of her that night. What a nice, simple gift. Story 24. Thoughtful. I wonder if my ex knows that I reconnected with him intentionally by downloading Tinder and arranging the settings very specifically so I'd find him on there faster to swipe right on him. Chuckles. I could have just messaged him on Facebook or something, but this way I'd know if he was actually interested again based on how he swiped. It didn't work out in the long run, but I'm a little proud of that one. Chuckles. Story 25. I was at a club for a bachelor party. There was a bachelorette party next to us. I spent forever talking to a girl, and it went nowhere. One of my buddies taps me on the shoulder. There was a girl waiting to talk to me. She goes, "I thought you were never going to stop talking to her." She had been watching me for a while. I had my back to her. My friends were apparently talking me up to her. Within a minute, we kissed. I felt such a rush. We ended up going back to her place, but it was far as hell, like an hour drive. Next day, I get to the boys' Airbnb, and they thought I got kidnapped. Definitely the most upfront woman I ever met. She was a bit too much into going out and drinking, but we went out for a few months. That's when I learned it was possible for a woman to finish 15 times in a single weekend. I was raw for a week after. Story 26. She walked up mid-conversation with my friends at a bar, handed me a napkin with her number, and just said, "I'm too drunk to flirt properly, so here's my number. Text me tomorrow." Then she left. Boldest move I've ever seen. And yeah, I texted. Story 27. Caught her fixing a bug in my JavaScript code at 2 a.m. during a group project. She didn't ask permission, didn't make it about herself, just left a comment in the code that said, "You were close. Here's what you missed." That quiet kindness hit different. We've been together 2 years now. Story 28. I still remember this from high school. My phone was having trouble connecting to Wi-Fi, and this one girl I never talked to walked up and asked if she could help. I gave her my phone, and she messed around with the settings and got my phone connected to Wi-Fi. After she handed it back to me, I realized she had purposely left the Contacts app open, and I saw she had added her contact info in there. Chuckles, very smooth. Story 29. Reflective. She used to purposefully walk her dog at specific times when my bus would drop me off at home and just happen to walk past. So we'd end up talking and walking in the same direction for a few minutes each day. Chuckles, little did she know at the time that if I got there earlier than usual, I'd give it a few minutes and make it look like I just arrived if she showed up, so that her plan had worked. Warmly. We've been together 15 years this year and married for 2 of them. Story 30. Chuckles. One time, she made a home from a potato and said, "I want you to live inside the potato home." I said, "Nice." And we've been together for 87 months ever since.
For the glorious nation of Kazakhstan. Very nice. I like.
I apologize, for English is not my first language. Indeed, it has been a regular fault of character. My unrelenting desire to speak such a language, not only with flawless fluency, but also with the trademark eloquence characteristic of the touted native speaker. It is with much humble disappointment, not only in myself but in my English tutors of yesteryear, that I admit, not only to you but to myself, that my endeavors to conquer the language with perspicacity, with a rigorous emphasis on harnessing my long-dormant, yet ever-present erudite nature, have not reached their ever-desired point B. The winds and the waves that haunt the oceans of bilingualism have sequestered me once more, but alas, I shall pull myself out of the abyss of linguistic despair. Hear me well, they shall call me King Arthur, the way I am about to make English mastery my Excalibur.
She really did ask you to come inside her spud house.
Story 31. She walked up to me at a college football tailgate and said, "We should fuck." So we did that off and on over the course of a few years, and we're still friends 20 plus years later.
It's insane how much lower risk that kind of advance is socially for women versus men.
A different girl just started tonguing the inside of my ear out of nowhere at a bar. It was weird.
Story 32. She asked me if I wanted to go to the beach with her. I said sure. She asked me if I had a razor or a shaver, as she wanted to trim up her bikini line. I said sure again. Then she asked me to help her. As a 19-year-old guy at the time, I was genuinely confused. She took off her shorts, and even my dumb 19-year-old brain realized what she wanted my help with. I had never even hugged her, yet I shaved her. Talk about nerve-wracking. She said I was really sweet because I kept asking her permission to touch her. Some guys get a first date kiss. I got to shave her. We dated for 2 years after that. Story 33. Suddenly treating me like shit all of a sudden, while flirting at the same time. Never took her seriously as a human being again. Story 34. I had a neighbor come over, and I was out of beer, so I told her to wait while I went to the store nearby to buy more. When I came back, she was naked in my bed. Story 35. I used to play in a co-ed volleyball league. One game, I spiked the ball, and it hit a beautiful blonde in the back row center directly in the face. Hard. Her nose started bleeding. I felt like dog shit. I wasn't trying to hit her. I ran over to my gym bag, grabbed my street shirt, and ran over to her to help stop the bleeding, apologizing the whole time. She said she wasn't mad. I sat out the rest of the match to get her nosebleed under control, and we talked. We got the nosebleed under control. She said if I really wanted to make it up to her, I could take her out to a baseball game and dinner. Turns out we were both huge St. Louis Cardinals fans. At the time, I was poor, but I ate ramen noodles for 2 weeks so I could afford the good tickets down near the first base dugout. Long story short, we've been married for almost 30 years. Story 36. I worked at a car wash. There were a few memorable moments. One woman spent 20 minutes wiping out the driver's side door jamb. She was bent over, wearing a mini skirt, constantly looking back to see if I was looking. She was going commando. Another had been flirting with me for a while. She came in wearing a mesh shirt with no bra in 40-degree weather. She might as well have been topless. My favorite was one who was clearly interested. She awkwardly tried flirting a few times. One day, she just pressed her driver's license against the side window, staring at me to make sure I noticed. Chuckles. Story 37. In 1997, I had just moved to Las Vegas. I was bored and went to a casino at 1 a.m., and I saw my boyfriend-type person at a poker machine. I waited to see if he was there with anyone. He was not, and sat facing him at another machine. I started talking to him. At first, he was a bit curt though polite, but when I asked him what someone as good-looking as he was doing there alone, I got his attention. I also got him to laugh as he was rather pensive. I had never ever done anything like that before or since. We were friends with benefits for a long time, and now we're more than that. It's complicated, and I live with him now. Story 38. I was at university and made a friend who was really nice. We were on break, and I told her I was going to the loo, and she goes, "Want me to hold your dick for you?" Then, after I got back, she proceeded to show me her total lack of a gag reflex. We're friends to this day, but fuck me, the lack of subtlety. Chuckles. Story 39. She looked up my MySpace profile from when I was a teenager. I was in my late 20s at this point and started sending me photos from it. It was not cute. I quickly found a way to get it deleted. Story 40. She invited me to her house to watch the Barbie movie. Then, maybe a quarter of the way through, she literally pulled me by the hand into her room. Story 41. I told a girl once in high school that my hands were cold, and she told me that her boobs were always warm. She even asked if I'd like to touch them. Chuckles, I did.
I watched a girl do a version of this. A guy at my table was complaining that the butter was too cold, and she said, "I can warm it up with my thighs." Chuckles. They hooked up, mercifully not in front of me.
Story 42. Met my wife in college, and I was helplessly unobservant to her advances. I liked her and she liked me, but I just wasn't picking up on her hints. She had a bad history of guys using her, so she wanted to be sure I was interested. She came up with a plan. A mutual friend in the group, ironically an ex that I was still on good terms with, was notorious for being a big mouth and couldn't keep a secret. So my wife told her she was interested in me and didn't know if I was interested. Fast forward a few days. I was sitting at a table with several people, including the mutual friend, sulking because it was wrapping up the first year of college and I hadn't had a girlfriend. The mutual friend said, "Are you serious? There are 3 girls interested in you right now." This was news to me, so I asked who. She wouldn't tell me, so I kept prying. Eventually, she named names. The The first girl I wasn't interested in, but the second was my now wife. Apparently, this surprised no one but me. It was apparently a joke among everyone how bad I was fumbling this. Chuckles. I asked her out within a week. We'll be celebrating our 12th anniversary this year. So yeah, she manipulated my ex to plant the seed that she was interested in me. It worked. Story 43. I met a stunning young woman at a party and had a great chat for about 10 minutes. I went to the toilet, and when I came back, she'd completely clammed up. She wouldn't speak to me. I kept trying to get the conversation going again, but she totally stonewalled me. My friends wanted to go to another party. I asked her to come along and she did, but she still wouldn't speak to me. Silent treatment. This went on for another few hours. We got married and had 2 kids. Story 44. These comments make me realize I need to be a bit bolder when I'm interested in a man. No wonder I'm single, laugh out loud. Story 45. One young lady got my attention when I was walking through Victoria Station in London approximately 25 years ago. She simply walked up to me, exposed her breasts, and they were fine to be fair. Chuckles, and then said, "Just thought I'd cheer you up." Then she ran back over to her friends, and we both carried on with our lives. I must stress, I think she may have been part of a hen party and possibly fulfilling a dare. But it did cheer me up because at that point I was going through a really rough time personally, so it all worked out for that fleeting 2 minutes. Chuckles. Story 46. A girl at a pub quiz deliberately wrote the wrong answer, so I'd lean over and correct her. Chuckles. She admitted it about 3 months into dating. Oldest trick in the book, and I walked right into it. Story 47. She accidentally spilled her entire iced coffee on my shoes at a crowded bar, then insisted on buying me new ones and paying for my dry cleaning. We dated for 8 months. Story 48. She knew about my love of all fruits. We had barely begun our relationship when she went on vacation, and when she came back, she brought a basket of various fruits just for me. I felt truly seen.
Did she know because she read your username?
Story 49. I was shopping at TJ Maxx when she grabbed me by the shirt and just said, "You're coming home with me." I could not resist. She was tall, French, and absolutely gorgeous. We had a fling for about a year until she moved to Colorado. Sad day. Story 50. Goddamn, you're fine. She was very, very drunk, laughing out loud. Her friends apologized and I bought her water and bread from a 7-Eleven. Felt good. I'm not gonna lie, haha. Thank you, random drunk girl. You made my day. Ah. Story 51. She beat me at a game I was way too confident about and then teased me about it. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just playful and smart. Chuckles. Story 52. We met online and we were talking about foods we like. She made and mailed me coconut macarons. They were the size of tangerines and pretty bad, but the effort worked out. Chuckles softly. We've been together for almost 18 years. Story 53. She calmly walked up, looked me straight in the eye and said, "You seem interesting. Are you?" Then just waited. Bold, simple, impossible to ignore. Story 54. A woman found me in the corner of a bar. She stuck her hand down her pants, inside her pussy, pulled her finger out, and ran it across my lip.
She was twice my weight and twice my age. I threw up at the table.
EW. The grossness potential here is mind-boggling. Did you get her sexually transmitted disease results?
That was almost 20 years ago, and I can still smell it on my upper lip if I think about it.
Story 55. I came into the bar with a date. Our eyes met. I saw her say something to her date. He gave me a look that could kill and left. She came up to me and asked for a ride home.
I was out one night at a friend's band show, and some woman was pretty much giving her date a lap dance in public. After a while, she came up to me and said something. I have no idea what, because it was so loud I couldn't hear a thing she said, and I can't read lips. She seemed very disappointed that I said no, though.
Story 56. I went to a birthday party for a friend's family member. I didn't know most of his family, but there was going to be food, and I obviously knew my friend, so what the hey, right? Before my future wife and I had even started dating, I asked if she wanted to go. Hey, so I'm going to my friend's family member's birthday. I don't know the birthday boy. I don't know most of my friend's family, and you don't even know my friend, but want to come. Okowo. Story 57. We went to the movie rental store. Yes, this was a while ago, and picked out a movie to watch. At that point, we were only friends. We talked a little bit with some minor flirtation. Once we got back to my place, I spent a minute or two opening the plastic holder on the rental tape and putting the tape into the VCR. By the time I turned around, she had undressed completely and was waiting in my bed under the blanket. Chuckles. Story 58. A McDonald's worker gave me an extra bag that was full to the brim with napkins. Her number was written on about half of them.
It was one of the managers. I would swing by a few times a week on my way home from work, and she had worked up the courage to take her shot. I let her know I'm already happily married, but I was flattered. She was about 8 years younger than me, and I went to school with her sister. We ended up talking up there, and thankfully it didn't turn awkward. Cool girl.
Story 59. A married woman sitting at a bar alone, wearing a slender green dress. She knocks over her Stella chalice to get my attention. Damsel in distress gets me every time. Chuckles. Damn that Disney. Story 60. At Tomorrowland in Belgium, a beautiful lady asked me for information regarding how to reach the main stage. We were literally right in front of it. Sadly, I didn't catch her real intention. I just pointed to the stage and got back to the conversation I was having with my friends. Chuckles. Obviously, the boys made fun of me, telling me I'd literally thrown away an opportunity. Anyway, I was just at the event to experience it and enjoy the good music. My mind wasn't into hooking up. It was the best experience I've ever had. Story 61. A friend told me that when he was a student, a girl came up to him in a bar and asked, "Fancy a shower?" Yes was the answer. Chuckles. Story 62. Chuckles? She literally wrapped her arms and legs around my legs and sat on my feet like a little kid because she didn't want me to leave the party. That led to a fun couple of months before her crazy got to be a bit too much. Story 63. A girl wrote in a Christmas card, "Hope you get everything you dream of this Christmas, me." It was over a decade before I realized there might have been any implication there. Chuckles. Story 64. Her brothers were suddenly not available to take her home, and they needed a ride themselves. All four of them in the same building at the same event. Story 65. A woman literally handed me a belated birthday card at a party. I opened it. Contained a lotto ticket, and it said she hopes I get lucky. Chuckles. We've been married for almost 11 years now. Story 66. She asked me to reach something on a shelf in a store where we were both the same height. Chuckles.
Please tell me that you said, "As you wish."
Story 67. She left a note under my car's windshield wiper while I was at work. It said, "I want to crunch your pubic hair between my teeth." It was a wild few years from there. Story 68. The most beautiful girl, to this day the most beautiful I've ever seen, tried to give me a handjob under our desk in math class in 7th grade. God, Redditors are obnoxious.
We're all hoping this was just an innocent fuck up. Let's just cross-reference user IC stomach 4500 in the Epstein files and, well, fuck.
Hesitant, the looks and the build of a 12-year-old.
You think a 7th grader is the most beautiful girl you've ever seen?
Story 69. I got sent nudes because I wasn't taking a hint, apparently. The worst part is it happened twice, not the same person. Story 70. A friend of a friend grabbed me by the balls. She thought it was funny, but I considered it assault. Story 71. She asked if I wanted pictures of her ass. We'd been best friends for like 2 years prior, and we were talking about her makeup routine at the time. I never did get my answer about mascara. Story 72. She went PS, like you do when trying to call a cat, and we ended up having the best sex I've ever had. We stayed up till dawn talking and drinking. Story 73. She needed to sort this underwear out and used me as cover to do it. It worked. Very well. Story 74. In my freshman year of college, she bought me a hoodie and then proceeded to sit on my lap. I was so awkward and introverted that I didn't react. I cringe just thinking about it. Poor girl. Story 75. She asked me if I think she's a spitter or a swallower at a work event. She was a little bit of both. Chuckles. Story 76. Accidentally on purpose. I left her diary on her desk at college after the last class. Chuckles. Yep, this was many years ago. A real diary. My buddy picked it up, read a couple of pages, and said, "Hey, you need to look at this."
My name a lot. And things like, he still hasn't noticed me. What do I have to do? My heart is aching for him. Her heart stopped aching pretty soon afterwards.
Story 77. 2 of them, actually. They stood right in my way when I was going full speed. I almost hit them, and then they just laughed. Story 78. I'm a woman, but when other women glance at me with that expression, like they know something I don't. Story 79. My girlfriend sent me a friend request on Facebook back around January 2014. I saw that she was very attractive but didn't think too much about it. She liked the odd post here and there but didn't say anything until one day in late March. I posted about Black Sabbath playing in Hyde Park in London in the summer of that year. That's when she commented that she'd like to go, but she couldn't afford the plane fare, so she'd have to swim. Chuckles. I replied that she could stay with me if she could come over and there'd be no strings attached. Anyway, we went to private messaging and she asked if I used Skype. She said she did. So I called her up and I saw the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Took 9 months before we finally met, and we've met a few times since then. We've even lived together for 3 months at a time when she's been here. We have our ups and downs and drama like many relationships, but we love each other to bits and hate saying goodbye to each other. It's been almost 12 years and we've kind of broken up a couple of times, but we're still going strong. I still fancy her after all this time. I couldn't see myself wanting to be with anyone else. Story 80. I was at some tiny store in Raleigh and encountered a lady outside looking for something. She saw me, got starstruck, wanted to share a hotel room, said her name and a few things. I ended up losing my virginity to her and went whole hog. Unfortunately, she also used me for $60 and it turned out she was schizophrenic. She was very flirty and had the biggest knockers I've ever seen.
Better men have lost way more for schizo chicks with great tits. Lucky guy.
Her name is Nadine, and she lives in uptown Raleigh among the homeless. She likes boxing and was telling me what to do. I was 22. She was 39.
Story 81. She handed me a cookie, made eye contact, and said, "Hi." Chuckles. Still the smoothest move I've ever seen.
A random cookie would get my attention too. Huh. Chuckles.
Story 82. Reading these comments is making me ashamed that I am too shy to make my feelings known to anyone. How do they do it?
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and about 53% of the shots you do take.
Story 83. She rear-ended my car at a red light. When we got out to check the bumper, she handed me her number and said, "Sorry, I couldn't think of another way to get you to pull over." She was joking about doing it on purpose, but we still ended up getting coffee. Story 84. She started playing Magic, a nerdy card game, to see me more often. It worked well. Story 85. A super random shirt lift. A split-second look at her tits from across the room after eye contact. I looked around afterward and lost my mind because I was apparently the only one who saw it. Found out later it wasn't a hallucination. Story 86. This cute checkout girl at a local pharmacy asked how I was doing when it was my turn. I responded, "Fine," and asked her the same. Her answer was that she was great as she was off her period. Chuckles. Story 87. She left a post-it note on my desk with a joke only I would get. Chuckles. It caught me completely off guard. Story 88. Chuckles in 5th grade. The girl who liked me kicked me in the nuts while we were playing soccer at recess to let me know she liked me.
Sorry, Mario. I didn't know how to express myself.
Story 89. When I was in the service and single, I used to go to the local grocery store and get snacks like Vienna sausages and such for my barracks room. I met a checkout woman at this store, and we exchanged numbers and started planning to get together. After our first date at a local park, I had to stop at a gas station to take a piss. While I was pissing, The door opens and it's my date. She gets behind me and holds my penis while I pissed. Shake and all. Chuckles. We ended up in a hotel that day and dated for a while after. Awesome lady. I later wondered how many guys she did this to before me. Got my attention though. Story 90. She corrected my terrible grammar in a group chat, and somehow it worked. Chuckles. Totally unexpected, kind of nerdy, but it got my full attention instantly. Story 91. Sitting at the bar of a crowded, super popular disco during the height of discomania. A smokin' hottie walks up and kicks me in the shin. Ow. Oh, I'm sorry. Did that hurt? Let me buy you a drink. Story 92. In high school, I was in a competition band. After our performance, we were sent to sit behind another band. Our scores came out lower than expected, and I was upset. This girl from the other band turned around and asked if I wanted to cry on her shoulder. There was another competition the next day that our band did not compete in. I went as a spectator specifically so I could find her and get her phone number. We dated for 6 years. Story 93. Coffee shop by my high school in the 90s. Super duper cute barista. I was playing Yahtzee with my friends and went up to the counter. I asked her if I could have a pen. She goes, "Why? So you can give me your number." Not slick. I replied, yeah. Chuckles. Story 94. She sat beside me and kept running her hands up and down my thigh, sometimes even touching little me. I gave her a questioning look and she said, "What? You don't like it?" I replied, "Oh, I like it." The rest of the night was pure bliss. Story 95. I was playing golden tea at a bar with a friend, and she came up and said, "Excuse me, is that your girlfriend over there?" And pointed at a table with nobody there. I was confused and said, "No, I don't have a girlfriend," and immediately knew what she was doing. The evening ended favorably for me. Story 96. In retrospect, the hints were blatantly obvious. I met my college ex in a business class. We were in the group and she first complimented my muscles. I thanked her and continued what I was doing. Days went by, and she asked me to be in her study group for an upcoming exam. It was only the two of us. Still, I didn't pick up on the clues. One day, she sat next to me, asking me to help her with a gym routine. This made my gym nerd brain go wild, and we planned a workout session. In my head, she was just another person who needed help getting back into the gym. We worked out, and I mentioned my favorite show was Arcane. She invited me over to her dorm to watch it after we grabbed some food. As the first episode played, I was so excited to watch since I absolutely loved Arcane. She slid her feet over my junk and gave me the fuck me eyes as I realized, oh, shit, she likes me. Let's just say we never made it past 5 minutes. Story 97. She beat me at a game on purpose? Or maybe not on purpose. Either way, I was locked in.
The maybe not on purpose is how you know it worked.
You think she might have accidentally beaten you? Who does that?
Story 98. She came to me and told me she knows I'm into other chicks, but that she's open right now. Story 99. A coworker asked me to come and install her Xbox 360. When I arrived, she said she likes to play in her room. Then, after I put everything together, it was missing a plug, so I went to Best Buy to get the AC adapter. Then I just went home. Later that night, she invited me over to play Halo 3. That was it, because I had friend-zoned her so hard that I think she finally got the message. Story 100. Unexpected? Like grabbing my underwear on the stairs or somewhere else back in middle school. Once, one girl pulled it from behind and ripped it a little. I was a bit mad. Story 101. Everybody knows that I have a fat fetish. It's not something I make a secret about myself. In my first year of college, there was a girl in my sister's sorority who put on 40 pounds, allegedly trying to get me to cheat on my girlfriend with her. Story 102. I was watching an Ultimate Fighting Championship event in a bar in the mid-2000s with a group of friends. It wasn't crowded, back when it was still pretty obscure in popular culture. It was the kind of place that had high-top tables in the back of the room where we were seated, and pool tables in the front where folks would shoot pool while watching the event or whatever. This older couple, in retrospect probably early 50s, were shooting pool, and when they finished, he put his arm around her and they walked towards the back of the room towards the exit. I was sitting in one of those high-top chairs, manspreading because why not, facing their direction because that's where the TVs were. The woman made eye contact with me, smiled, so politely I smiled back. She then winked, and on her way by, grabbed my entire crotch, like fingers spread, trying to palm a basketball. One tight squeeze, let go, and walked out the door with her man. Honorable mention goes to a now ex-girlfriend. When we met for the first time at a party, she asked if I wanted to see how flexible she was. When I said absolutely, she put one leg up on the shelf behind me and leaned in close. Absolutely called my bluff and caught me off guard. I turned bright red and had no idea what to say. Story 103. The last girl I dated, before we were even going out, we were both drunk and right in front of all our friends. She out of nowhere straddled me and went down on me hardcore at the beach. Chuckles. Everyone just kind of awkwardly sat there until it was over. Story 104. Went home after a nice romantic dinner. Shared house, just the two of us lying by the fireplace. She says, "If you could have anything right now, what would it be?" My response, "A leather jacket. Her family owned a hospital. Nope, never got laid nor the jacket." Story 105. She appeared on television saying, "We have COVID. We're locking the whole country down." Story 106. After a conference dinner, she came up to me and said, "I called dibs on you." It ended 14 years later with only one argument the entire 14 years. Then I discovered she was fucking her trainer. Story 107. She just kissed me out of nowhere, as an attempt to find out whether I was already taken or not. Story 108. I briefly saw her in a doctor's office lobby. She got my information off the sign-in sheet and looked me up on Facebook. Story 109. At a party on an outdoor patio, it was somewhat dark. I didn't know her. She walked up to me, smiled, and slapped me across the face. Not hard, but not exactly gentle. Chuckles. She was with a guy. Pretty sure she'd had a few drinks. Story 110. She followed me down the stairs of a club at 8 a.m. to give me her number on the street as I was getting into a cab. She was awesome. Story 111. She remembered one small thing I mentioned weeks ago and brought it up casually. Instant attention. Story 112. She rode her bike directly into mine. It broke my front wheel, and I couldn't bike anymore. She walked with me next to my bike for 45 minutes. Story 113. She walked out of her bedroom wearing a strap-on and her stripper outfit, the actual stripper outfit since that was her job at the time, and asked me and my quasi-girlfriend if we wanted to have a threesome. The woman in question was one of my friends from before I met the quasi-girlfriend. I knew she was down to fuck, but that was still pretty surprising. Story 114. My first girlfriend opened the street door for me to sneak in at about 8 a.m., completely naked. Her parents had just left for work. The baby sister was asleep, and the maid wouldn't be in for 2 hours. That was our much-anticipated first time ever doing it all the way, after almost getting caught and having to hide for over an hour in her wardrobe a few nights before. BB, if you read this, I hope you're doing well. Sorry I lied about not being a virgin. I was just a teenager trying to impress a 10 out of 10. This other one was drinking at the pub where I worked early afternoon, just us inside. I had already fallen for her but didn't think we had a chance. We started talking about piercings and tattoos, and she said, "I have only one piercing," and proceeded to lift her tank top right there and then. I must have frozen for a good 5 seconds. Gata, you did not need to do that. You had me hooked when we first met on my birthday. This exchange student one time was crashing at my student's house. After a late romp, I went out for water, probably 2 a.m. I thought everyone was sound asleep. Fuck it, I'm going naked. Halfway through the long corridor, she shows up going to the living room with a glass of water, gave a cheeky scream. I didn't want to be a dick, but there was nothing I could do. Drunk and stoned, the best I could muster not to intimidate the poor girl was to say, "Sorry, if you don't want to look, just close your eyes." She did not close her eyes and passed by laughing. That same weekend, I was fetching water for her at 2 a.m. Hermosa, thanks for all the good times. Chuckles. Alright, that's enough reminiscing for now, before my wife comes to investigate why I'm smiling at the phone. Story 115. My roommate's friend left a post-it note on my bed while I was at work, inviting me for relations. Chuckles. A guest staying at a hotel I worked at left a review with her phone number, asking me to call her. Story 116. There was this woman who acted drunk. She tried to fake her fall so she could land towards me. I dodged out of instinct, Chuckles, and I still had to say sorry afterwards. Story 117. This is unconfirmed, but every once in a while I think about it and cringe. In college, I worked as the admin of the dorm computer lab. There was a girl who would come in pretty much every day to do homework. We would always say hi and chat a little. Sometimes she'd sit next to me and we'd chit-chat. She always went out of her way to say hi around campus. I definitely had a crush, but she was way out of my league. She'd been dating a guy and seemed pretty serious about him. I thought he was a douche, but I didn't really know him, so I figured I was probably just jealous. One day I came in, and they were in the lobby of the dorm. He was yelling at her. She ran off crying. The next time she came into the lab, she was super quiet and looked very crushed. A bit later, I heard her say my name across the lab. She waved me over. I went over and said, "Hey, how's it going?" She was working in WordPerfect, which I'd seen her use many times. She said, "I need to start a new line. Can you help?" I felt a little dumbfounded but tried not to show it. I said, "You mean like get the cursor to the next line?" She said, "Yeah." I reached over and clicked the enter key. She said, "Oh man, that's it? I don't know what I was thinking. Thank you so much." I said no problem and that everyone has those moments. I asked if she needed anything else. She kind of looked at me like I was dumb and said, "No, I guess not. You are always so nice, though. I really appreciate it." I said anytime and walked back to my desk. When she left, she stopped by my desk. We chatted a few seconds. She repeated how nice I always was to her. When the conversation died down, she kind of stood there quietly and said, "Well, goodbye." After she left, a mutual friend told me that she and her boyfriend had broken up. I mentioned the incident, and they confirmed he had been a dick to her for a while. Later that day, talking with some friends, I told them the story. They looked at me like an idiot and said, "Dude, nobody is that dumb. She wanted a reason to talk to you to ask you out." They said I was a dipshit and she was probably looking for a nice person after that douchebag. I saw her a few days later, and she was still super nice to me, but I never had the courage to do anything, and she quickly found someone new. Was it what my friends said? Who knows? Story 118. Once, someone just handed me her number and said, "You seem interesting. No games, no build-up." The directness was unexpected and refreshing. Story 119. Back in college, I sat next to a girl I thought was attractive. In our art class, I was hopeless and had no clue what was going on. She handed me a note with her number and name and said we could study together. That was pretty sick. Chuckles. Story 120. I was just hanging around, talking to a group of friends, when this girl I casually knew walked up, sat in my lap, and put my arms around her hip. Chuckles. Story 121. She jumped in front of my car while I was cruising downtown, just to tell me, "Can I please get your number?" Story 122. I was about to get into bed when my housemate, who's 10 years older, came in. She dropped her sarong and, wearing only her panties, asked if I wanted company. Certainly, that got my attention. Story 123. She was chatting about getting her nipples pierced. I jokingly asked to see them, and she said yes. Chuckles. To this day, I haven't been able to reproduce this. It baffles me. Story 124. I went to this comedy show with my girlfriend, and we're watching this lady do a bit about how she calls out to guys by telling them she likes their shoes. As I'm walking out of the venue hand in hand with my girlfriend, I hear someone calling out to me, "Hey, I love your shoes." And it was the comedian. Story 125. Bar night with coworkers. She asked me for a ride home. I knew she was separated from her husband. Surprised, unexpected hand down my pants. Story 126. A woman I knew only slightly approached me in a bar and said, "Let's fuck." So we did. Chuckles. Turned out she was engaged and soon married. A last fling, apparently. Story 127. In a bar, she dropped her drinking straw on the ground, turned so her back was facing me, and then picked it up without bending her knees, showing off her amazing butt. Chuckles. She then looked at me and asked if I could get her a new straw. Story 128. I met a girl at a music venue. I didn't get her number, but she found me on LinkedIn and gave me her number. Apparently, I babbled the entire night about COBOL and Fortran. Chuckles. And she still wanted to talk to me. Story 129. She asked me if my friend and I were DJs. I actually was, but that was 10 years ago. I was so confused as to how she could know that, but she was just throwing out some random bullshit and got lucky, in both ways. Chuckles. Story 130. She ran into a road sign with her bike while I was skating up a steep hill. Chuckles. Even if I do say so myself, I had a damn distracting ass and legs when I was rollerblading 30 miles a week. Story 131. There were washed beer glasses in front of me, I guess. We were both regulars at the same dive bar. I'd never seen her there before, but my other friends there knew her. If it got busy, sometimes we regulars would bar back for the bartenders to make it easier for them. We all knew the owner, stayed after hours, smoked inside after closing. Real family type shit. It was great. Anyway, I was watching the TV, and it was a slow night. She hopped behind the bar to the sink in front of me and started washing glasses, smiling at me, and eventually sparked a conversation. Story 132. My last girlfriend before I met my wife flicked me in the forehead. Chuckles. I was reading a book and she was flirting with me, but I'm oblivious, so it never registered until the flick. Story 133. She called me in my dorm room and asked me on a date. It more or less worked. Chuckles. We've been together for 33 years. Story 134. Playful. She purposely plays with her extremely long hair, walks right in front of you, and gives you a very flirtatious smile. Story 135. At the gym, she acted clueless about where to place the dumbbells. Chuckles. I think she was pretending to be clueless. I just gave a confused stare before she could turn around to see my reaction. I had to show her where to put them back, and we started a conversation right there. Story 136. She starts wearing a color I always wear, right after she tells me she doesn't wear that color. Cutest thing ever. Story 137. She straight up walked up to me and my male friend while we were mid-conversation, saying, "You guys give me a good vibe. Came to say what's up." Story 138. A buddy and I stopped at a bar after work, and we were just sitting there sipping our beers when she slipped up behind me and handcuffed me. One shackle on my wrist, one on hers. I don't exactly recall what clever line she gave me, but she was pretty disappointed. Chuckles. When I told her my wife wouldn't appreciate her kidnapping me. Story 139. Back in college, while walking by the library, she told me I had very nice posture. I still think about how weirdly good that made me feel. Thanks, Alicia. Story 140. I had been flirting with a girl since high school, but we were never single at the same time. When my ex and I split up and posted on Facebook that we were single, she immediately drove 12 hours across like 5 states and surprised me in my dorm room. She was in lingerie with a care package of drugs and booze. I happened to already be with another girl, but they were both super cool about it, and we had a crazy threesome weekend. Story 141. 97 missed calls. I was watching a band. It scared the shit out of me when I checked my phone afterwards. Story 142. A lifetime ago, I was a sous chef in a hotel restaurant. A bartender I worked with asked me for help changing a keg. I followed her to the beer cooler to grab it, hoisted it onto my shoulder, and headed toward the bar. Then, while I was lugging this half-barrel, she pulls a Jessica Rabbit and tells me to enjoy the tail feathers. I almost dropped that keg right through the floor. Story 143. She complimented my hoodie. Unfortunately, It had been months since a woman flirted with me or showed interest, so it didn't register in my brain until she was halfway across the store. I didn't want to make her uncomfortable by chasing after her. Story 144. She followed me into the washroom after work and grabbed my dick while I was trying to take a piss. She was drunk as fuck. Story 145. I was working at the bar, serving drinks, and the girl kept staring at me all night. Finally, she asked me what I was doing afterwards. Story 146. I lived in an apartment building that had a pool. One day I was sitting on the side of the pool, legs dangling in the water, when I struck up a conversation with a girl I'd seen a few times at the pool. She climbed into the water, swam over to me, told me I had beautiful eyes, then proceeded to stare directly at my crotch through the rest of our conversation. Yeah, we hooked up that afternoon. Story 147. I sighed. That's it. Just a simple sigh. And somehow a girl managed to start a conversation. What kind of sigh was that? A sigh of relief? Tiredness? Or what? Something along those lines. I remember sitting in an empty biology class in high school, and this girl and I were the only ones there. That was over 20 years ago. Nope, nothing happened. I still can't believe someone was able to start a conversation with just a sigh. Story 148. I once walked into a bar and sat down. A woman came up and said she would pay for my entire meal that I had just ordered if I talked to her friend. I ended up getting both their numbers, and nothing ever came of it. But I got a free meal. Chuckles. Story 149. She started shooting at us. Probably didn't want my attention, but she certainly got it. Story 150. Usually, it's the unsolicited accidental naked picture images. Chuckles. Oops, I didn't mean to send that to you, but what do you think of it? I used to work at Walgreens in their 1-hour photo lab, and on multiple occasions, women would accidentally scroll past their nudes on digital cameras and say, oops, while gauging my reaction to their oops. Story 151. This one girl got me a ton of candy for Valentine's Day. I accepted it, said thank you, and went on my way to share it with the boys. Her best friend stopped me and said I had to kiss her friend since I accepted the candy. I said no, and they said they wanted the candy back. I gave it back, but that was one way to get my attention. Chuckles.